Hello, welcome back to Tranquility du Jour, nourishing conversations about living a full and meaningful life with doses of tranquility. This is episode 608, and I am your host, Kimberly Wilson, bringing you tranquility through this medium for the past, like 18 years. Anyway, delighted to be with you today, and I wanted to make sure, too, that you were on the Love Notes list. So the past few Love Notes that I sent out on Sunday morning, that you've gotten the Tranquility in Everyday workbook. I hope you have, and I hope you're loving it and enjoying it. And if you're not yet on the list, go ahead and sign up at KimberlyWilson.com/love notes, and you too will receive it. All right. Well, I wanted to share with you a peek into my recent trip to Paris. And I had my nearly 80-year-old mother in tow, and I wanted to share just some insights into planning, packing, and savoring. So for you too, whether or not you're going to Paris, whether or not you're going to the nearby town, whether or not you're dreaming of going someplace, my hope is that this podcast will just give some insights into, what goes into actually getting there, right? And having a good experience. So that's what I'm going to be talking about with you today. Now, also over on the blog, KimberlyWilson.com/608, you are going to find all sorts of photos from the experience. And I just thought they would be kind of fun to give a peek inside. Of course, I was sharing them as I went along over on Instagram, but it's easy to miss things and you may not be on Instagram. So you'll find all of this over in the podcast, or all of this over in the show notes, right? Which is on the blog. And again, that's KimberlyWilson.com/608. So let's start with one thing I want to make sure is on your radar, which is July 15th, the mid-year virtual retreat. So it's hard to believe that here we are. We are in June, obviously, when this is recorded. And we're almost halfway through the year. And so in this retreat, the idea is to do a little look at, what were our dreams and wishes for the new year? How are those unfolding? Are there any shifts we want to make? What are the different types of wellness and the ways in which I can infuse that into my day? And then we also create a roadmap to help you as you think about the rest of the year. So details for this are over on the website, KimberlyWilson.com/virtual retreat. And you can join the waitlist and then get some fun bonuses whenever registration opens. And then also there's a link to sign up for the waitlist for my fall micro courses. I've got some fun things coming your way this fall that I've been working on. And, the idea is just to have a lot of multimedia and accessibility for you that gives tips and tricks on all things from creativity, mindfulness, wellness, and of course, the new one is going to be mental health. So lots of fun things happening there. And if you join the waitlist, you'll be the first to know about them. And the link to that is in the show notes. Okay, so let's get right to it. Let's chat planning. So why did we go the first week in June? Well, last fall, I developed a little crush on Harry Styles, which I am now over. I am happy to say I'm over. I don't know what happened 6 weeks later or 6 months later, and I have moved on from said crush. But anyway, I was really into him, and I saw that he was going to be in Paris in June. And I thought, what a wonderful time. It's good to have a reason you're going back someplace or going to someplace. And it doesn't mean you can't just go because you want to go. But for me, sometimes it's like, I'm going to go to a workshop, or there's a ballet I want to see that's happening, or there's an art exhibit. One time I went because I wanted to see Degas at the opera exhibit. And then the irony is it came to the Washington Museum, National Gallery of Art next. And I did not realize that, but it's okay. I got to go to Paris, but then it came to the National Gallery of Art and then the pandemic hit. So I did get to see it there, but just barely. But anyway, random aside, but sometimes, you're just like, this is happening there. And it gives me a reason to go. Okay, so that's why I chose that particular week, first week in June. And I was also there last year, the first week in June, for a righty retreat. Now, the thing to keep in mind, and I will keep this in mind, I think moving forward, is the first week in June is quite busy. It's very busy there. I'm sure June, July, August are going to be just mayhem. And last year I also went in April and I enjoyed that more. It's a little cooler and it was also less crowded. And of course, this year, as you've probably seen 2023, they're talking about just how many people are traveling right now. So you want to keep that in mind because it really does affect your experience from lines to crowds to, sold out shows, etc. So that's why I chose those dates. And it's nice to just think about what is an anchor, that is the reason you want to go someplace. And again, you don't have to have it, but I find that helpful for me with planning. Now, one thing too, along the way, we kept adjusting the dates slightly, of course, fitting in to make sure we were there for the Harry shows, but adjusting it because the cost was almost $1,000 for the airfare over what I'm used to paying. I mean, so high. And so finally we settled on flying out on Memorial Day because it was $200 cheaper than flying out, the next day or two. So that's why, as you think about planning, it's helpful to look at, go to Google Flights and see if I fly this day, what is it? If I fly this day, what is it? I mean, a difference in $200, is helpful, right? And so I was able to then also adjust my Airbnb accordingly. The other thing with regard to planning is to find a place to stay. And I spend a lot of time on this because certain things are very important to me. I need tons of natural light and I need a bathtub. It's just like those are the two things that are somewhat critical. I also really like to have a washer and dryer if possible. And so I found this Airbnb in Les Halles, right, which is beautiful, central, easy to everything Paris. And it was really, really lovely. So finding your lodging, some people prefer hotels. That's great too. There's no right or wrong. And then also set events that will help be your anchors because nothing's worse than arriving someplace gorgeous and be like, oh, what do we do today? Now, that's really nice if you are going there just to relax. Okay. So let me back up and say that. But if you're like, I want to see some stuff, I want to experience it, I want to live the life here, right? And not like I need to go to every tourist attraction on the list, but it's more of like, these are things I want to experience. So, of course, we had the 2 Harry shows. Mom wanted to go to Versailles and Giverny, which is Monet's gardens. And I found a tour that was an all-day tour that we went on the second day after we had arrived. And that was wonderful because, you're so a little jet lagged and you get transported from place to place. And we got to see a lot, right, in that one day. And then the other thing that we scheduled or got tickets for was La Boheme at the Paris Opera, which was lovely. And then the week before, when I thought I'd scheduled everything possible and looked at everything possible, I found a ballet that was happening on Saturday night. La Boheme was Sunday. Harry was Thursday and Friday. The all-day tour was Wednesday. So, we had things pretty well lined up. But when I saw this ballet, I was like, oh my goodness, I had not seen that and I had been looking for a ballet. But, whenever you're looking like 6 or 5 months out and you don't see anything, you kind of give up, right? You're like, oh, nothing's happening. But turns out it was. And it was really lovely. It was at the Olympia, which is like a music hall. A friend of mine said he saw the Beatles there. So, it's just this really beautiful old quaint experience and hall and setting. So that was really nice. So getting these staples that are your anchors can be helpful because again, it's tiring. It's inconvenient to travel. Let's be honest, right? Yes, it's exhilarating. You're going to wonderful places and it also is a lot of work. And so having these anchors, you're like, okay, so tonight I know we're going to Harry, right? So we need to get our boa. We need to, listen to some music before we go. For the ballet, it's like you want to wear something in particular and, go and have maybe a glass of wine or tea beforehand. And so, knowing these anchors are on your radar is just helpful to have a calendar of sorts. Now, also, I think it's really important to make sure there's some free time there. So whenever I would lead retreats in Paris, I always would have like a morning excursion and then either an afternoon or evening excursion. So they would have either the afternoon or evening available. right? So, it is important to keep that free time in, but to have some anchors, because nothing's worse than getting to Paris and being like, oh, I'd love to go see La Boheme. I just saw a flyer about it around town and it's sold out. So, getting these things lined up in advance can be very helpful. The second thing is packing. And I wanted to share my packing list, and I'll pull this together in text form. But, I got everything, which you'll see in the show notes, into a carry-on luggage. And then I did have one additional kind of like, how would I say, medium-sized duffel type bag that I also carried. And that also contained my purse and, what else was in there? Like, my water bottle and, additional layers because I'm usually cold on the plane, and some toiletries and my technology. That's what was in the kind of, the bag that I had with me under the seat on the plane. So the big things that I packed were my uniform, right? So 3 2-in-1 fitted tops, 3 pairs of leggings. And of course, I wore that also on the plane, 2 bodysuits, a satin dress, satin pants, tulle dress. Let's see what else. A boa, a hat. Oh, my bamboo washcloth. Believe it or not, I travel with a very soft washcloth because nothing's worse too than leaving makeup on other people's towels. So anyway, my bamboo washcloth, pillowcase. I do travel with my own pillowcase. It's just a satin pillowcase, but I like that. And I just put that over their pillowcase, not because I don't think it's clean. It's because I want to have that softness on my skin. A laundry bag, scarves, my wrap tunic, which I'm actually wearing right now, a blazer, which I lived in, sweatshirt, actually didn't use because I ended up buying a sweatshirt at Repetto that I'd had my eye on it. I've never bought anything at Repetto before, so it was very exciting, but I ended up not actually needing it because it was hot. It was warm in Paris. Lacrosse ball. And I used that on my feet. And I tell ya, oh my gosh, it was so helpful after, 16,000 steps a day. And let's see, powder. So I have my magnesium powder and of course my supplements and medications, teas, and then gifts. So those are the things that I packed. Also a curling iron I packed, and I didn't even use it. I mean, I rarely do curl my hair, but sometimes it's nice to be like, oh, well, I could if I wanted to, and I didn't use it. And it was just that and a couple other things that I felt like I probably didn't need. But I was pretty light, as you hear, on what I packed. And as you'll see in the photos, like I did kind of a photo tutorial as I went along of like filling the suitcase. So you'll see the photo of it full and open and then full and closed just to get an idea of the size. And again, I had plenty of space, and I was even able to bring back a sweatshirt that I purchased and a skirt from Repetto that I purchased along with like leg warmers and, a couple other gifts and things like that. And there's no problem to bring it back. So you always want to leave a little extra space. And I always felt so sad for those people that I saw hauling tons of luggage because there are not a lot of escalators or elevators, and we were on a 3rd floor walk up, and, you regret that extra pair of shoes or whatever, whenever you're hauling things like that up and down. The other thing I just wanted to talk about for a moment is the idea of savoring. So what I mean by that is there were times where I was like, oh my gosh, I'd get an email of something that I needed to handle, or, we had this issue with like my Google password. So I'm changing that while I'm over there and ended up breaking my entire email system, things along those lines. And I'm like, am I really spending my time in Paris on this? And I remember being at the ballet and just being like, oh my goodness, I need to be practicing. The performance is coming up so soon and I need to be practicing. And I was like, okay, stop and come back to this moment, to this experience, to this breath, right? Versus I need to be doing X because X is gonna be there when I get back. And you know what? It was, and everything's still here and everything still needs attention. But while I was there, what I really worked on, and I encourage you to do in everyday life, not even if you're, in some beautiful setting abroad, but to come back into the present moment, really connect with the breath, the sensations, and connect with yourself, right? And then for, purchases, I think the big thing, I love to pick up gifts, little consumables, candies. I got these really pretty lavender sachets that have an M in gold on it that are Marie Antoinette. It's like for Marie Antoinette from Versailles. And just things like that I thought were really fun and will be fun gifts and a way to share my experience with others, little teas, things along those lines. So I hope this is helpful as you think about your upcoming travels or adventures, or even just dreaming up what might be on the radar, how to do a little bit of planning, how to do a little bit of packing, and a little bit of savoring along the way, and really connecting to those senses, because that is what it all comes down to on this journey. All right. I thank you so much for tuning in today. I wish you a wonderful week ahead. And and I hope to see you over at Tranquility du Jour at an upcoming event. Have a great week.